Think you know all the hidden gems of the 70s rock scene? Think again. Let's dive deep into the bands that rocked hard, had incredible musicianship, but somehow faded into obscurity. Yet they deserve way more love than they ever got. UFO was one of the most underrated hard rock bands of the 70s, blending heavy riffs, melodic hooks, and jaw-dropping guitar work. Formed in 1968, their early albums leaned towards space rock, but with Phenomenon in 1974, they shifted to a hard rock sound. Songs like Dr. Doctor and Rock Bottom showcased the incredible talent of guitarist Michael Schenker, whose blistering solos influenced future rock legends like Kirk Hammett of Metallica. Despite releasing classics like Lights Out in 1977 and Strangers in the Night in 1979, UFO never reached the same heights as Led Zeppelin or Deep Purple. Constant lineup changes and management struggles kept them from superstardom. Yet their legacy lives on through their influence on the new wave of British heavy metal movement. A true unsung hero of 70s rock, UFO deserves far more recognition. If there was ever a band that should have been huge but never quite made it, it's Starz. Hailing from the US, this hard rock outfit had all the elements for success: catchy hooks, driving riffs, and anthems that rivaled the biggest bands of their era. Their 1976 self-titled debut introduced them with a bang, featuring tracks like Detroit Girls and Pull the Plug, showcasing a mix of gritty hard rock and melodic songwriting. Their follow-up albums, Violation, 1977, and Attention Shoppers, 1978, refined their sound, blending glam, power pop, and straight-up rock and roll. Songs like Cherry Baby had the potential to be massive radio hits, but Starz never got the same promotional push as their contemporaries like Aerosmith or Cheap Trick. Despite their lack of commercial breakthrough, Starz had a cult following, and their influence can be heard in bands like Mötley Crüe and Poison. They were pioneers of what would later become the hair metal movement, but the timing just wasn't in their favor. If you love hook-heavy, energetic 70s rock, Starz is a band you need to revisit.
Just give me more. I'll make a minute off the floor.
The Dictators were the band that should have been huge but never quite fit in anywhere. Blending hard rock with a sneering punk attitude, they were loud, brash, and way ahead of their time. Formed in New York in the early 70s, they played like a mix of the Stooges and early Ramones, but with a dose of humor and absurdity. Their 1975 debut, Go Girl Crazy, was a riot. Songs like Two Tub Men and Weekend had the energy of punk before punk was even a thing. So why didn't they make it big? They were too raw for mainstream rock and too rock and roll for the punk elite. Later albums like Manifest Destiny in 1977 proved they had the chops, but success remained out of reach. Still, their rebellious spirit shaped punk's future, even if they never got their due. Detective had all the right connections. Signed to Led Zeppelin's Swan Song label and featuring the charismatic Michael Des Barres on vocals, they had a bluesy, heavy sound that fit perfectly in the 70s rock landscape. Their self-titled debut album, 1977, delivered tracks like Recognize Me and Grim Reaper, songs dripping with swagger and soulful intensity. Their sound was a mix of Zeppelin-style power, Bad Company grooves, and a touch of Deep Purple's bluesy grit. Despite their immense talent and industry backing, Detective never broke through. Maybe it was because they arrived at a time when arena rock was already packed with legendary names, or maybe they lacked that one signature hit to push them over the edge. Detective had everything a rock band needed: an electrifying stage presence, a tight, hard-hitting sound, and that gritty, soulful voice from Des Barres that could command any audience. Des Barres later became more famous as an actor, but Detective's music remains a hidden treasure. They deserved better back in the day, and they still deserve more love today. Before we dive into the Feelies, you know what would give me that ultimate feeling? Watching this channel hit 1,000 subscribers in record time, just putting it out there. The Feelies were one of those bands that had everything: brilliant musicianship, infectious energy, and a sound ahead of its time, but never got the recognition they deserved. Formed in New Jersey, they blended jangly guitars, hypnotic rhythms, and nervous intensity, creating a style that later influenced REM and Sonic Youth. Their 1980 debut, Crazy Rhythms, featured standouts like Fa Se La and The Boy with the Perpetual Nervousness. Full of frantic strumming and relentless grooves. So why didn't they break big? They were too quirky for mainstream rock and too early for the alternative boom of the 80s. After a long hiatus, they returned with The Good Earth in 1986, with tracks like Slipping Into Something, showcasing a mellower but still unmistakable sound. While they never became a household name, their legacy lives on in the DNA of indie rock. Straight out of Atlanta, Hydra was the definition of southern rock with a hard-edged, bluesy bite. While bands like Lynyrd Skynyrd and the Allman Brothers dominated the southern rock scene, Hydra leaned more towards the heavy, riff-driven side of things, making them stand out. Their self-titled debut album in 1974 delivered tracks like Glitter Queen and Going Down, both of which showcased their powerful mix of blues, boogie, and no-nonsense rock and roll. Led by Wayne Bruce's gritty vocals and Spencer Kirkpatrick's searing guitar work, Hydra had all the makings of a band that could have been massive. They followed up with Land of Money in 1975 and Rock the World in 1977, albums packed with heavy-hitting anthems that deserved way more attention than they got. Unlike their southern rock peers, Hydra didn't chase radio-friendly ballads or commercial hits. They stayed raw, loud, and uncompromising. That made them a cult favorite but kept them from mainstream success, a southern rock powerhouse that deserved more recognition. The Tubes were one of the most outrageous and theatrical bands of the 70s, blending rock, satire, and performance art into a wild spectacle. Hailing from San Francisco, they had a knack for combining catchy hooks with biting social commentary. Their 1975 debut album featured White Punks on Dope, a sarcastic, over-the-top anthem about privileged youth, which became a cult favorite. Despite their talent and originality, mainstream success was elusive. They were too weird for classic rock radio, yet too musically sophisticated for the punk scene. They finally broke through in the 80s with She's a Beauty, but by then, their earlier rawer sound had been overshadowed. Other classics like Mondo Bondage and What Do You Want From Life showcased their fearless creativity. The Tubes never fully disappeared, but their wildest, most inventive years remain criminally underrated. Before they became Y&T, they were known as Yesterday and Today, a Bay Area band that straddled the line between hard rock and the emerging heavy metal scene. Formed in the early 70s, they had a melodic yet powerful sound, driven by Dave Meniketti's soaring vocals and blistering guitar work. Their self-titled debut album in 1976 and follow-up Struck Down in 1978 were packed with high-energy, hook-filled tracks like 25 Hours a Day and Earthshaker, which showcased their ability to mix melody with pure rock intensity. So why didn't they explode in the 70s? Timing. By the late 70s, disco was dominating the charts, and the rise of punk made it tough for straight-up rock bands to gain traction. It wasn't until the 80s, when they rebranded as Y&T, that they finally got more recognition, but their 70s material remains some of the most underrated hard rock of the era, raw, anthemic, and filled with undeniable talent. Blue Öyster Cult had everything a great 70s rock band needed: haunting melodies, blazing guitar work, and an air of mystery. Known for their mix of hard rock and cryptic sci-fi-inspired lyrics, they created some of the most unique rock anthems of the decade. Their 1976 classic Don't Fear the Reaper became their signature song, with its eerie atmosphere and unforgettable guitar riff. Other standouts included Burnin' for You, Godzilla, and Astronomy, each packed with heavy riffs and anthemic choruses. Despite their talent, they never reached the superstardom of contemporaries like Led Zeppelin or Aerosmith. They were often labeled too intellectual for hard rock fans and too heavy for mainstream audiences. Still, their dark, poetic approach to rock left a lasting impact, influencing metal and alternative bands alike. Blue Öyster cult may not have ruled the charts, but they built a devoted cult following that remains strong today. Few bands embodied theatrical rock quite like the sensational Alex Harvey band. Fronted by the eccentric and charismatic Alex Harvey, they were a mix of hard rock, glam, blues, and cabaret-style theatrics, making them one of the most unique acts of the 1970s. With albums like Next in 1973 and The Impossible Dream in 1974, they delivered unforgettable tracks such as Faith Healer, the Hot City Symphony, and their iconic cover of Delilah. They had all the talent and originality to be huge, but their quirky theatrical approach was a bit too left field for mainstream rock audiences. In an era dominated by straightforward hard rock and stadium anthems, their offbeat style made them cult heroes rather than chart toppers. Still, their influence on future artists, from punk rockers to alternative acts, proves they were far ahead of their time. Wild, unpredictable, and utterly brilliant, the sensational Alex Harvey band remains one of rock's great hidden gems. April Wine might just be one of the most underrated rock bands to come out of Canada. Blending bluesy hard rock with melodic hooks, they had all the ingredients of a classic arena band but never quite got their due. Formed in the late 60s, they hit their stride in the 70s with albums like Harder, Faster and First Glance, producing killer tracks like Roller, I Like to Rock, and Say Hello. Despite their polished sound and radio-friendly anthems, they struggled to break through internationally. They had some success with Just Between You and Me in the early 80s, but they were often overshadowed by bigger names in the rock scene. Those who discovered them, however, knew they had something special: tight musicianship, powerful vocals, and songs that deserved more recognition. For those who love pure, no-frills rock, April Wine is a hidden gem. Blending progressive rock, glam, and futuristic themes, Bop Deluxe was one of the most innovative yet overlooked bands of the 1970s. Led by the brilliant Bill Nelson, they combined intricate guitar work with sophisticated songwriting, crafting albums that felt both ahead of their time and rooted in classic rock energy. Their 1976 album Sunburst Finish remains a masterpiece, featuring tracks like Ships in the Night and Fair Exchange, a mix of rock, jazz, and futuristic soundscapes. So why didn't they break bigger? Part of the problem was their refusal to fit neatly into a single genre. They were too melodic for punk, too experimental for mainstream rock, and not quite full-fledged prog. As a result, they remained a cult favorite rather than a commercial powerhouse. But their impact is undeniable. Bill Nelson's guitar work was nothing short of spectacular, and Bop Deluxe created some of the most forward-thinking rock of the decade, a true unsung hero of 70s rock. Triumph was Canada's answer to power trio rock giants like Rush, yet they never quite reached the same legendary status. Formed in 1975, they delivered a mix of hard rock, progressive elements, and soaring anthems. Their breakout moment came with Lay It on the Line in 1979. A song that showcased Rick Emmett's incredible guitar work and unmistakable vocals. Other standouts like Magic Power, Fight the Good Fight, and Rock and Roll Machine proved they had both technical skill and arena-ready hooks. Despite their talent, Triumph always seemed to live in the shadow of Rush. They had the musicianship, the songs, and a devoted fan base, but they lacked the consistent mainstream push needed for superstardom. Still, for those who dig electrifying guitar solos and uplifting rock anthems, Triumph remains one of the great unsung bands of the 70s and 80s. Angel was a band that looked like they came straight out of a rock and roll fantasy, dressed in all white with a stage presence as theatrical as their sound. Discovered by Gene Simmons of Kiss, they were signed to Casablanca Records and positioned as the anti-Kiss, flashy, melodic, and mysterious. Their self-titled debut in 1975 introduced their signature blend of progressive pop rock and hard-hitting riffs, with songs like Tower showcasing their larger-than-life sound. Despite their immense talent and showmanship, Angel never reached the superstardom that seemed destined for them. Some blame poor marketing, while others point to the fact that they were simply ahead of their time. Their fusion of progressive rock, glam, and heavy metal didn't fit neatly into one box, and radio stations struggled to place them. Still, Angel's influence can be seen in later glam and power metal bands. They were a band of pure spectacle and ambition, and their music remains a hidden treasure of the 70s.
Drink 2 or 3 cards.
Root Boy Slim and the Sex Change Band were as bizarre as their name suggests. A wild bluesy rock outfit fronted by the eccentric Root Boy Slim, a Yale-educated madman with a knack for satirical tongue-in-cheek lyrics. Their 1978 debut featured Boogie Till You Puke, an outrageous party anthem that became an underground favorite. Other songs like Dare to Be Fat and You Broke My Mood Ring showcase their offbeat humor and funky groove-heavy rock. Despite their cult following, mainstream success was never in the cards. Their blend of blues, funk, and comedy rock was too weird for radio and too raw for mass appeal. Root Boy's wild onstage antics and unpredictable behavior only added to their outsider status. Though they faded into obscurity, their fearless approach to rock and roll remains one of the strangest and most entertaining footnotes in 70s rock history. Texas-based Bloodrock took hard rock into darker, heavier territory, blending eerie storytelling with pounding riffs. Emerging in 1969 under producer Terry Knight of Grand Funk Railroad fame, they had a raw, sinister edge that set them apart. Their biggest moment came with DOA from Bloodrock 2 in 1971. A chilling song told from the perspective of a plane crash victim. Its eerie organ melodies, haunting vocals, and morbid lyrics made it one of the most unsettling songs ever to hit the Billboard Hot 100. But despite this success, Bloodrock's shift toward a more commercial sound in later albums alienated fans. Lineup changes and shifting rock trends also played a role in their decline. By the late 70s, they had faded from the spotlight. Still, Bloodrock deserves recognition for their fearless approach. They were one of the first American bands to bring a doom-laden heavy rock intensity that would later influence metal and hard rock acts alike. Sir Lord Baltimore was one of the earliest bands to truly embrace what would later be known as heavy metal. Formed in Brooklyn in the late 60s, they played loud, fast, and unapologetically heavy, so much so that some critics credit them with pioneering the genre. Their 1970 debut album, Kingdom Come, featured thunderous tracks like Master Heartache and Helium Head, filled with blistering guitar work and relentless drumming. Despite their groundbreaking sound, the band never found commercial success. Their music was too aggressive for mainstream rock at the time, and poor promotion didn't help their case. By 1976, they had disappeared entirely, yet their raw power and high-energy playing laid the groundwork for countless metal and stoner rock bands that followed. Though they vanished without a trace, Sir Lord Baltimore's legacy as a proto-metal powerhouse remains undeniable. Most people know Ram Jam for their 1977 hit Black Betty, a thunderous riff-driven reworking of an old folk tune. But they were far more than a one-hit wonder. Formed by guitarist Bill Bartlett, their debut album was packed with high-energy rockers like Keep Your Hands on the Wheel and Too Bad on Your Birthday, blending bluesy hard rock with raw intensity. Their follow-up, Portrait of the Artist as a Young Ram in 1978, featured even tighter songwriting and heavier riffs, proving they had staying power. So why didn't they break bigger? Bad timing and industry setbacks. With punk and disco dominating, blues-based hard rock was struggling for airplay. Add to that poor management and label issues, and Ram Jam never got the momentum they deserved. Despite their short-lived career, Ram Jam's raucous, high-energy sound left a mark. They weren't just about Black Betty, they were a full-throttle rock band that should be remembered.
Move the way we do. There'll be thousands of us. Thousands of gods, thousands.
The Godz were the definition of rough and rowdy, no-nonsense rock and roll. Hailing from Columbus, Ohio, they had a biker rock aesthetic and a rebellious attitude that made them stand out. Their 1978 self-titled debut, released on Casablanca Records, was packed with gritty, fist-pumping anthems like Gotta Keep a Runnin' and Candy's Going Bad. Capturing the raw energy of the underground hard rock scene. Despite their potential, the Godz never broke through. Their music was too gritty for mainstream radio, but lacked the polish needed for commercial success. Casablanca was more focused on disco at the time, leaving the band with little label support. By the early 80s, they had all but disappeared. Still, their raucous, freewheeling rock lived on through a dedicated cult following, proving that the Godz were never about fame, they were about pure, unfiltered rock and roll. Germany's Triumvirat was often called the German Emerson, Lake and Palmer, and for good reason. This progressive rock powerhouse blended virtuosic keyboard work, intricate compositions, and classical influences, creating some of the most ambitious music of the 70s. Led by Jürgen Fritz, their album showcased dazzling musicianship, particularly on Illusions on a Double Dimple in 1974. And Spartacus in 1975, the latter being a concept album about the legendary gladiator. Despite their technical brilliance, Triumvirat never gained widespread recognition outside Europe. Progressive rock was already a niche genre, and with bands like ELP, Genesis, and Yes dominating the scene, they were often overshadowed. In addition, lineup changes and a decline in prog's popularity by the late 70s hindered their momentum. Yet Triumvirat remains one of prog rock's finest hidden gems. Their blend of orchestral grandeur and rock energy deserves to be rediscovered by any fan of the genre. They were proof that prog rock wasn't just a British movement, it was global, and it was spectacular. That's it for these underrated 70s rock bands. If you loved rediscovering these forgotten gems, make sure to like, subscribe, and hit the bell so you never miss out on more rock nostalgia. And if you're hungry for more, check out our other videos on 70s bands that deserved more recognition.